Hello again. This is kind of a weird week for us, and it's a little bit weird because I have two separate videos on just the content for this week. This is because these advocacy papers or persuasive papers are based off of a very specific form, so I want to talk a little bit about it. In the last video, I just talked about the argument, what it is, how to create one, and what to avoid. Now, I want to give you a structure for your advocacy papers. This is not the only structure by any means, but it is one that can help you out. All right, so in our advocacy papers, the first thing we need is an introduction. All right, this is the first paragraph. An introduction does two main things. The first is it sets up your argument. And then the second is it announces your argument. So that argument is your claim, it is your thesis statement, it is your idea, your position. All right, so here's a very quick form for the introduction, and I will have images below the lecture for this week to help you out. For an introduction, this is how you can start off. I recommend thinking about the introduction as an upside down triangle. All right, so the first part is here. All right, so for the first 2 to 3 sentences, spend some time just setting up the conversation. For example, if you've decided that you are going to write on gun laws, you can start off by saying something like, the conversation about gun laws is one of the most important ones happening right now. All right, so this gives you a general, so we're starting relatively big, a general introduction to the topic. You can do that for 2 to 3 sentences. Then, after you have that start, narrow it down. This is where it gets to the triangle. All right, so for example, you can narrow down by focusing on a specific moment. If you are, and I'll stick with this example, writing on gun laws in the United States right now, you can narrow down your topic by talking about the Parkland shootings from a couple years ago, or gun violence in schools. So either of those allow you to start big, so with just guns in general, and then narrow it down to talk about violence in schools or a particular event. All right, you can do that second step for 2 to 3 sentences. So at this point, you have 4 to 6 sentences just setting up the conversation. Step 3 of this triangle is so you've narrowed it down, you started big, you narrow down, and then you end at a point. The point is your argument, your thesis. I highly recommend having your claim at the end of the introduction because it makes it a little bit easier to find. I have a couple quick tips with that point at the end of the introduction. First of all, it does not have to be only one sentence. If you are trying to state your claim clearly and directly, sometimes you need to use more than one sentence. Do not feel like you need to write a really, really long sentence that keeps going and going because you're trying to get everything in there. In that thesis, once you set it up, just let your readers know the major, most essential line of your argument, right? What you come back to again and again, you do not need to get everything, and you can make it 2 sentences or even 3 sentences. The other basic thing I will say about the end of that introduction is that it can be in the first person. Not every instructor is the same with this. For me, I am perfectly fine with you writing something like, in this paper, I will argue blank. That is okay. You are allowed to just own your idea as long as you are backing it up with evidence and with reasons. So at that point, we have our introduction. So our triangle starts big, narrows down, and then ends at a point. All right, that gives you an introduction of probably half a page to 3/4 of a page, which for me is the sweet spot. You don't want an introduction that takes up, 4 or 5 sentences, which is just too short. to get things going, but you also don't want an introduction that takes up a page or a page and a half. That's just too long, right? Introductions should be efficient. They're all about just setting up the argument and announcing the argument. All right, once you have the introduction, you move on to the body paragraphs. The final drafts for this paper should be about 6 to 8 pages. So these papers are not 5-paragraph essays. Please do not write 5 paragraphs. That will make them very, very, very long paragraphs. The trick with body paragraphs, use as many as is necessary to prove your argument. There is no trick to this. There is no correct answer with this. A good tip with body paragraphs, shoot for somewhere between a half a page and a full page. All right, less than half a page is slightly short. More than a full page is a little bit long. You can probably chop that up into 2 separate body paragraphs, but play with that. Now, once you have an introduction announcing your argument, the body paragraphs work through the evidence. All right, so this is where you let your readers know how you're going to back up your claim. The first part of a body paragraph, and you may have heard this in the past, is called the topic sentence. Topic sentences do 2 main things. The first is that they capture the overall point of that paragraph. So your reader can look at that topic paragraph and get the basic idea of what you are going to focus on in that paragraph. The second thing that a topic sentence does is it goes back to the argument. Your reader should be able to see how that first sentence of the paragraph relates to your overall idea. If you are unsure if you are doing this, here's a very quick tip. Take a separate sheet of paper or an index card. Write your argument, write your claim on it. Then, once you have that on an index card, move the card down the paper. So take the card, put it next to the topic sentence of your first body paragraph, for example. All right, try to see if you can directly relate them. So you'll have your thesis statement in front of you, and you'll have your topic sentence in front of you. If you cannot directly relate them to each other, odds are your reader cannot. All right, so your body paragraph has topic sentences that somehow capture the point of that paragraph and go back to the major argument. And your body paragraph also uses whatever evidence. These can be statistics, these can be quotes, these can be whatever you want, anything that proves your main point. All right, so at this point in our hypothetical paper, we have that triangle introduction, announcing our claim. We have body paragraphs that go back to that claim. Now, once you have as many body paragraphs as necessary, you can do the conclusion. All right, here's my thing about conclusions. I was always told when I was in middle school, high school, that the conclusion simply restates what you have already written in the essay. You do not have to do that. That always struck me as very, very strange, and that is because you could take someone's paper, you can look at the conclusion, you could cross it out, and it wouldn't make a difference. It wouldn't change the essay at all, and it wouldn't change the point at all. So, you can use your conclusion to do far more than just restate your claim. Here's my tip for the conclusion. Use it as an opportunity to open up your argument. This is what I mean by that. So, look at what you have proven throughout the paper, and you can think about a couple of things. First of all, you can think about the implications of your argument. For example, if you are writing this paper on gun laws, and your argument is that the United States needs to have stricter gun laws to cut down on violence in schools. That is your argument. You have all these body paragraphs going back to it. Now, for example, in your conclusion, what are the implications of that claim? Who is going to create those stricter gun laws? What should those gun laws look like? Who should be given access to particular guns and for what reasons. All right, another possibility for just opening up your argument is to think about the counter argument. All right, the counter argument is basically a statement that pushes against your own claim. One of the things I talked about in the video on the thesis statement is that any thesis or any claim has a counterclaim. Someone can come in and say, you're wrong, I disagree. And that's a good thing. That means you have to prove your claim, you have to prove your idea. So you can use your introduction in your advocacy papers to very quickly introduce that counterclaim. This can be as simple as saying, some individuals believe that passing stricter gun laws violates the Second Amendment of the Constitution. That's a single sentence. That is an argument that many, many people have made, and it is a logical argument. It's not a nonsense argument. So I can introduce that in my conclusion, and then I can push against it. I can write about, for example, why that isn't true. Right? I can write that the Second Amendment had militias in mind. It wasn't thinking about private gun owners, right? I can make that argument. I can push against the counterclaim, the counter argument. All right. Another tip, and this is the third one, for opening up our conclusions, or using the conclusions to open up our papers, is to think about the so what question. All right. Assume your argument is 100% correct. It isn't, because no argument is 100% correct. But assume that it is. So what? Why should we care? Why is your claim important? All right, so this is one way to understand the conclusion. Think about the conclusion as the upside down of the introduction. So the introduction started big, ended small, right? We had that triangle. Now for the conclusion, flip it. You're going to start at the point, so you can take 2 to 3 sentences just restating your main claim in different words, and then you're going to open up, right? So you're going to think about the implications, or why your claim is important, or why the counter-argument, the counterclaim is incorrect. Any of those options, start with your point, your idea, and opens up. All right, I know this video is a little bit long. Hopefully you guys found it useful, and it really walked you through various ways or various models for understanding the introduction, the body paragraph, and the conclusion. If you have any trouble with this, please reach out to me.